Hello, I hope you're having a wonderful day so far. I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you, actually. I wanted to say thank you to every one of you who have left me an amazing review over on iTunes listening to this podcast show. So I really want to do a shout out, actually, to Shake Into Shape. Thank you so much for your review. You said, I absolutely love Carrie and the Female Entrepreneur Association. Every time I feel doubt in my ability, I listen to a podcast or masterclass and it gets me back to believing and taking action. Thank you so much for that. I am so glad. It makes me so happy to know. So thank you. If you enjoy this podcast show, I'd absolutely love it if you could leave me a review. It means so much to me. I read all of them and I am so grateful for them. And it helps this show to get discovered by more people. So if you enjoy it, then I would absolutely love you to do that. Okay, so in this episode, I had an incredible conversation with my amazing friend, Brandon Lucero. Brandon has a podcast show called The New Generation Entrepreneur. It's amazing. I've actually been on it myself, so if you want to check it out, but definitely listen to his show. And we've actually worked together. I think since 2017, we started working on video content together, and we would film together, and we had so much fun actually creating content. And when it comes to creating content and marketing and all that stuff, he's just brilliant. And in this episode, we talk about how you can create compelling content that's going to engage your audience and actually create a result for you. So he shares his framework on that, which is brilliant. He actually has created a masterclass for us too inside the members club, which is all around this. It goes deeper into content creation and how to create engaging, compelling, amazing content that's going to build your business. So if you're part of our membership, then definitely check out that masterclass because it's really bloody brilliant. Me and Brandon also always have weird and woo-woo conversations about all sorts, aliens, all that fun stuff. So I try to weave in some fun stuff in along the way. You might be into it, you might not. But anyway, despite our weird chat, we talked a lot about some really powerful things that can help you to build a successful business. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. You are watching the She Means Business show with me, Carrie Green. I'm the founder of the Female Entrepreneur Association and the author of the best-selling book, She Means Business. And every single week, I'm going to be talking with you about how you can turn your ideas into a wildly successful business and actually live the life of your dreams. You can do this, and I'm so excited to show you how. So let's get started. Brandon, I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much for chatting with me.
I'm so excited to be here and so honored for you to have me on your podcast.
I know, I'm excited for everyone to just hear our chats. I mean, I know we're going to try and talk about helpful stuff for everyone listening, like how to create powerful content to grow our businesses and engage our audiences. But obviously, most of the time when we do chat about some fun stuff, some woo-woo stuff. I
love the woo-woo.
Brandon tells the best stories, everyone. Like, you have the best stories about aliens and everything. I love it.
I've had a lot of experiences in my life, that's for sure. And it's always fun when you meet people that love that stuff like you. So yeah, I mean, we can try to talk about content. We'll just see where it goes.
So for everyone listening, Brandon and I first met in 2018, I think it was. Was it 2018? Yeah.
Maybe 17, somewhere around there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was 2017, actually.
Yeah.
And I'd come to California and we were filming, we were in Santa Monica, weren't we? Filming. Yep. And we did 2 or 3 days of filming together. And while filming, we discovered that we both really into like woo-woo stuff.
And in your opinion, do ghosts exist?
Yes, definitely. Ghosts definitely exist. I used to hear stuff.
As a kid?
Yeah, like as a teenager. It was just like voices like that would tell me to go and do things.
So ghosts do exist?
I think so.
Awesome. Well, that's the end of this episode of 5 Things About Carrie.
Yeah.
And then we would spend so much time talking that we'd be like, oh crap, we actually need to film something now.
Yeah. To be honest with you, we probably could have filmed all the content in a day and a half, but it took us 3 days because we would tell so many stories or talk woo-woo or manifesting or, all that stuff.
And every time filming since, we've done it 3 times now. And this is exactly the same. We just can't help ourselves and just start talking about all sorts of weird and wonderful things about life and, yeah, like you said, manifesting and all sorts of stuff. And I told you about cosmic ordering, I think the first time we met.
The first time we met. Yeah. You told me about cosmic ordering a parking spot in LA, which is like nearly impossible to find. And you're like, yeah, we did it. And every time we do it, just like, whoop, we pull up and there's a parking spot.
Yeah. So good. I love that cosmic ordering tip. Everyone should cosmic order parking spaces. Basically just ask for a parking space from the universe and it delivers. It's great.
Yeah. I love it.
So obviously, aside from the woo-woo and the funny conversations that we have, obviously over the years, you've really helped me with video and creating content. And for me in my business, and for so many businesses now, it really doesn't matter so much what your business is about. I mean, for some businesses, I'm like, I can see how content might not be that high up on the list of priorities, but for my audience, I feel like creating content is so important because our businesses are about, we've got these ideas and these messages and these stories. And when you're building a brand, doesn't matter if you're a product or service based or you've got a membership or a course, it goes beyond the product or the service. You're talking about a transformation, about a result. You're selling an emotional experience, aren't you? And so our stories and the content we create builds up that picture and gets somebody to want to actually buy from us. So I feel like it's so important for all of us. And for me with FEA, it started with content. It started with me having to figure out how to actually communicate what it was I was trying to say and try to bring people into this online platform to learn and feel inspired and feel empowered to build a business. It's just over the years for me, I focused on video, and it's been such an amazing way to get my message out there and my stories out there and to build that connection with an audience, and for them to the point where then people watch content and they're like, I want to be part of this, I want to join the membership, I want to buy what she's offering, kind of thing. And it's just been like, I would not have created the success I've created if it wasn't for understanding content and
right,
putting it together. And you are so good when it comes to this. So can we firstly let's just talk more about the power of content.
Yeah. So, I mean, everything you said is exactly true. And it's exactly right, especially if you have an online business. I mean, I tell people all the time, when you start an online business, it's not like you start a local business where you could find a location with a lot of foot traffic and kind of have people come in, right? Yeah. So a lot of people have this misconception that an online business is easier and it's great and I can make money from my computer and while I sleep, and some of that stuff can be true. You have to drive the traffic. You have to get the eyeballs. There's no walking around, like there's no foot traffic. Yeah. And so you have to generate all that. And one of the ways to do that is with content, and especially the free content. And a lot of people, and we can dive deep into how to do it all, but there's a lot of mistakes that happen when people do the free content. And when they make these mistakes, they're consistent all the time. They're doing everything everyone tells them to do, and it just doesn't resonate. So we're like 8-10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, you could just put out almost any type of content. People will find it, they'll come in, they'll buy whatever you have. But now there's so much competition, you have to be a little more strategic with it. But at the end of the day, it's how you drive that audience. It's how you drive the eyeballs to your stuff. And it's how people get to know you. So like, even though, let's say you sell a course on Pinterest, how to use Pinterest for business, like people aren't going to buy it just because you teach Pinterest, like, because there's like 30 other experts. So content also allows people to get to know you, to build a connection with them, to show what you stand for and all of that stuff. And so content is shifting, but yeah, at the end of the day, it's so powerful because it's literally how you drive traffic to your business. And again, it could be an online business, it could be an offline business. In my opinion, almost every business right now needs to be using some form of content for sure. Yeah.
I agree. And I'm so grateful to my past self for putting in the time creating content. And it's at the beginning, I was so crap.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to say and I didn't know what to do, but I just showed up and did it anyway. And it was stiff and it was awful. And I just persevered with it. And, because when you get started, you don't necessarily have it all figured out. You don't have all your stories figured out. So, because one of the things you just said is that like people make mistakes with creating content and they create stuff that doesn't engage. And so for anyone that is in that position, what would you say?
Well, there's a couple things. Kind of like what you said when you first started, it was crap. And same with me. Like you go watch any of my first videos, they're awful. And it's one of those things you just get better with it over time. Like you're never going to be, Olympic swimmers aren't Olympic swimmers the first time they get in the pool. Yeah. And so it's those things that you have to just go and do, and you get better and you improve. And it's just the way life is. But at the same time, a lot of people try to get everything perfect. What is the message? What am I doing? What am I selling? And they forget that sometimes the journey or the action brings the clarity. And so, sometimes you start to do a piece of content or you script out a piece of content. And we've all had those experiences where we start to journal something and all of a sudden like an idea comes, another idea comes, another, and it's almost happening so fast we can't write it all down. Well, that only happened because we went out there and we actually started journaling. And so it's the same thing with content is you only get the clarity and you get the direction when you actually start doing it. Because then you see, this felt good, it didn't feel good. This resonated with my audience, this didn't resonate with my audience. And what starts to happen is I almost look at it as like the alphabet, right? So there's A at the bottom and Z at the top. Imagine there's a stairway from going from A to Z. And everyone wants to get to Z and they want to start at Z, but you have to go up all the single stairs in order to get there. And what will happen is when you get to B, step B, and then C, and then D, most people don't realize happens is you're actually at a higher vantage point, which means you have a better way of looking at your business. You have a higher bird's eye view, which brings a different level of awareness of how to navigate your content. And that only comes from actually going out and doing it. But most entrepreneurs try to get it perfect. Like, I need to say the right thing and I need to do this. And so we have a philosophy, because we do a lot of content for a lot of people. And so we have a philosophy inside of our business that is 70% perfect is perfect and 100% perfect is failure. And when people usually have like that going in their head, it makes it a lot easier to see the success with content.
Yeah, it's so true. I think perfectionism is a huge reason why so many people never get started. Yep. They never get going.
Well, I don't think they realize, and being an experienced entrepreneur, you start to realize like the failures, they're gifts. They're like, they're presents that are given to you from the universe, and to learn the lessons, to get the clarity, to do all that stuff. And people are so afraid of that because they classify it as failure, where I look at, or they look at failure as a bad thing, as a negative thing, something you don't want. And sometimes when I'm in really bad times in my business, I'm so grateful and so thankful for these downtimes. Like last week, we had a hacker hit us, and yes, it was not fun, but there were so many great lessons of how I was holding myself, where my mind was going, how I dealt with it inside of our company, how I showed up as a leader. And there was an amazing gift. And I look at those things as gifts now. And it's the same thing with content. Yeah, you might put a piece of content out there and it might flop on its face. It might have a typo in it and people are going to comment on it. So what? You learned a lesson. You got some traction. You got to see what worked, what didn't work, what resonated, what felt good, what didn't feel good. And now you have such a new and better level of awareness to create something better the next time. So the faster you can put out content, the faster you get these gifts, the faster you get that awareness, and you start to craft content that becomes more powerful.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's it's a really powerful way of looking at things. Like a few weeks ago, or maybe a month or so ago now, I put something out, an email out and a piece of content, and I got so much stick for it. Like somebody really didn't like what I said, and so publicly announced that she didn't like what I said. Well, it created so much drama. But you know what? From that, I learned so much, and it really helped me to look at myself and look at what I was saying and improve. And I agree. Like, you have to look at everything that happens, the good and the bad, and pull from it the lessons so that you can move forward. And going back to perfectionism as well, I think no matter what type of content you're creating, whether it's a podcast or a blog post or a video, I think people wait to have it all figured out and to have the perfect website or the perfect camera setup. And it's like, no, just take the path of least resistance and just do something and get it out there as quickly as you can, just to see what's possible. And like what you said, that clarity comes from taking action, and the more action you take, the more the pathway is going to unfold and the more clarity you'll begin to start to see. You don't have to wait. Like, pick up your phone, make a video.
Yeah, anything, just, or even a live stream on your computer. Like it literally it doesn't matter. You could spend 2 weeks making the perfect video, or you could get 10 videos out that are 70% perfect and have way more traction that way. So that's what I always recommend to everyone.
So obviously you help so many people with creating powerful content. Can you talk us through how you go about doing that? And like, if somebody was like, right, I want to create more content I want to create content that will truly engage with my audience and help me to build a successful business, what would you tell them to go and do?
Okay, perfect. So this is gonna be a long answer, just fair warning. But before we create any content, we have to first recognize that content is nothing more than just a vehicle. So we hear all the time, like, go create content, be consistent with it. And what happens is people then go create content, but they're not intentional with it. So they'll like survey their audience, they'll find popular keywords, they'll do things that pop into their head, but they're not really considering, what is my messaging ecosystem? Like, what does my brand stand for? What do I stand for? How is it connected to my offer? Because at the end of the day, like we talked about at the beginning of the call, content is something that's supposed to get people to the product, to your business. And if you're doing content that's not related to the product or directly tied to the product or whatever you're selling, well, it's kind of pointless. And so what happens, people spend so much time with content and they get no traction. I call these people the unheard entrepreneurs. So they're people who just like do a ton of how-to educational content all the time on all these topics. They survey their audience, and no matter what happens, just they don't get the traction. So what we have to first look at is the messaging. And that's basically, what are you saying? So once the messaging is dialed in, it doesn't matter what type of content you want. Video, podcast, blogging, Instagram posts, doesn't matter. So basically, we've narrowed it down to 3 things that we focus on. We do focus on how-to educational, but I always tell people, that's not 100% of our content. It's like maybe 50%. And when you look at people like Gary Vaynerchuk, who've grown faster than anyone has and probably ever will, and doesn't do a single traditional tutorial-based how-to video, you really have to ask yourself, like, well, what is he doing? And what are all these other people doing to garner this traction? And so we do want to do the how-to content. We only want to do how-to content that's related to the product that we're selling. So for example, if I sell a video course, I'm not going to do a video on how to build a website, even though that might attract small business owner who are my avatar, but I'm not going to do it because it has nothing to do with my product. So how-to content. Number 2 is connection pieces. Now, most people are going to look at this as motivational, inspirational, and to the untrained eye or ear, that's what it is. It's like these motivational, inspirational videos. But when we look beneath the surface of what's really going on, we're very strategic with what we're doing. So we focus on beliefs and identity, which is what Gary Vaynerchuk is really good at doing. So it's reinforcing the identity of the person that you want in your audience, and reinforcing the beliefs that you have that you're going to share with them. So if you look at Gary, he's always talking about the entrepreneur, reinforcing the identity of the entrepreneur and working hard and all this stuff. And he goes against like the 9 to 5 and being unhappy in a job. And a lot of entrepreneurs resonate with that because they believe the same thing. So although it might look motivational, what he's doing is it's a psychology type of thing where he's reinforcing who you believe you are and the beliefs that you have. So we have to start to identify those. And I'll give you guys a quick, easy way to just start playing around with this. What I would want you to do is to look at your top 5 core values. So just find a list online somewhere, top 5 core values, and number them from the one that's most important to least important to you. So you can find a list of like 100 or whatever online. And inside of our program, we have like over 200 or 300. So you go through it. And for me, it's family is number 1, business is number 2, money's number 3, and integrity is number 4. And by the way, if money's not in one of your top 5 core values and you're trying to build a business, good luck. And like, make sure it's in your top 5 because you need money in order to grow a business. And the more money you make, the more impact you can have. And if it's not in your top 5, it's not going to be one of your focuses. So anyways, family was number 1. So I view myself as a father, as a family man, as a husband. Well, those are my identities: family man, father, husband. Well, my number 1 core value is family. Number 2 was business. So I view myself as an entrepreneur. Number 3 is a person, is money. And I view myself as a person with money. And number 4 is integrity. So imagine like entrepreneur.com released an article and it was titled, parent entrepreneurs that have integrity make the most money. Like, I'm going to click on that thing and I'm going to support it. Why? Because it literally supports and reinforces 4 of my identities. And so if we just do that with your titles, and if you're creating content, no one's paying attention to it, I guarantee you're not doing that. And if people are paying attention to it and you feel like you have the wrong people in your audience, it's because you're not using identity in the topics. And so obviously there's a little bit more to it, like how do we craft it and script it and all that stuff. But just know that you need to start incorporating the beliefs that you have and your audience will have, and the identities that you have that you want your audience to have, and that'll start to form connection. The last and final piece of a message. And by the way, this is what I'm creating now is what I call the messaging ecosystem. So no matter where you go, whether it be content, an ad, an email, a podcast interview, or whatever, you're going to just use this messaging ecosystem. That way you have consistency no matter where someone experiences you online. So, and that obviously will be injected into all types of content. Now, the last and final one is thought reversal. And what I love about thought reversal is that it allows you to stand out because you stand for something. It allows you to end suffering in your audience's life. And it can be a little polarizing. And so in my eyes, it allows us to create a better world. And so what thought reversal is you looking at your space and recognizing the things that people believe to be true that aren't. And because they believe it to be true, it causes suffering in their life. So for me, I look at our industry and I go, okay, great. Everyone's been preaching to do how-to tutorial-based content, and people do that 100% of the time, and it causes them to blend in because all the other experts are doing the exact same thing as them, so they blend in. And so that's a belief that our industry has, and I get to thought reversal that. So I even did it on this podcast. I used Gary Vaynerchuk as the example to show how he's not using how-to content. And so now that I get to teach that and I get to thought reversal your beliefs and move you to a better spot, not only do I end suffering, not only do I make my industry and my niche a lot better, but now what I'm doing is I'm becoming a thought leader. I'm saying things in ways that people have never heard it before, but it also makes so much sense. And so when I do that, it creates demand for what I sell. It allows me to stand out and it allows me to end suffering. And that to me is the most powerful thing we can do for anybody, is to give them that experience. And that's why we created thought reversals, which basically, well, let me just say this. Thought reversals can be used in content, but they're also just a concept you can even use in your own life. Like, what beliefs do I have and how do I thought reversal it? But I think it's a beautiful thing because it ends the suffering and it creates demand. And to go back to that example with Gary Vaynerchuk, if I did a video and I said, how-to content is not how to grow an audience fast, it's going to be polarizing. It's going to grab attention because it's going against the grain. And I said, I understand why you think that. Everyone and their mom tells you to do that. But look at Gary Vaynerchuk. He grew the fastest and doesn't use a single traditional how-to video. People in that moment, in just 3 sentences, people go, oh my gosh, he's right. Oh my gosh. And what I did in that moment is not only ended the suffering, but I created demand for what Gary did or what he does. And so I could just go into, so what does Gary do? Well, he uses thought reversal videos. He uses beliefs and identity. How do you do that? Well, let me explain. And guess what? Now that's also connected to my offer. So I'm creating demand for what I sell. So that's kind of my long-winded answer. Does that all make sense?
It does. So how do you actually then start to tap into some of these things? So for example, I'm not sure how many people are wandering around being like, oh, I know this thought reversal and I know this thought reversal. I think people were like, how do I even bloody think of a thought reversal? Like, What exercises do you do to help you tap into these stories? Because I think one of the biggest challenges I see people have, and I know I've had it myself, is I'm just living life. I'm just doing it, that I don't actually pay attention to the stories, and I'm not stopping to think about like what I believe in. But I know with the value thing, that's a clear example of like, go and look at a list of values, go and understand like what your personal values are. But like with a thought reversal, for example, do you do anything to help you to keep coming up with them?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So we've narrowed it. So it's all focused on beliefs. And, most people don't. The problem with beliefs is most people don't recognize that they're beliefs. They think they think it's real. And what happened, like even this podcast is a perfect example. So that everyone listening right now, like you guys didn't actively think is this good? Is it bad? Do I like this? Do I not like this? Like you just subconsciously automatically made a decision on whether or not you liked it or you didn't like it, or you had a thought around it. And you didn't sit there and analyze it and think about it. The subconscious made that up for you. Now you're going to leave this podcast thinking that you're having that belief, but that belief is going to feel real. You're going to walk away not saying, oh, I have a belief that podcast was good, or I have a belief that podcast was bad. You're going to leave and you're going to say that podcast was good or that podcast was bad. And that becomes your reality. You don't even question it. And so our audience does this all the time. And so when we look at thought reversals, we have to identify the belief. And these are typically things that people think are true that just aren't true. And so the way I classify belief is it's something that isn't true 100% of the time. Like right now, I'm talking to a microphone into Zoom. Like that's true 100%. There's no one's going to argue because that's literally what I'm doing. So that's not a belief. That's a fact. So we have to identify beliefs. So we've narrowed it down to 3 different beliefs that you're going to want to focus on. Number 1, and this is where I recommend everyone start, are what I call industry norms. So these are things that are inside your space that maybe 10 of your competitors are all teaching that you're kind of like, I don't know if that's really that effective anymore. Or maybe it's something that's been taught inside of your space for so long that no one's even questioned it. So like right now inside of our space, that is how-to content. People have said add value by teaching, and giving everything away for free. So a new entrepreneur comes in the space, they hear 20 gurus say it because that's just the way it's been. And then they assume that's true. And the big gurus who came up in the last 5 to 10 years, that is what they did. And it worked then because there's no competition. So that for me would be an industry norm. Another industry norm is kind of like vulnerability builds connection. We hear that all the time. Be vulnerable so you can connect with your audience. And it's like, no, vulnerability releases the thing that builds the connection. And if you're vulnerable with the wrong thing, then it could actually do really big damage to your brand. So that's another industry norm that we go against. But start recognizing these things that either all your competition keeps saying over and over and over again, where you're like, I don't know. And then look at the things that have just been done a certain way for so long that people just assume that's the way to do it. And you start there with those industry norms. The next one will be limiting beliefs. And so you just have to listen to your audience and you'll start to hear them come out. But the reason why we start with industry norms and not limiting beliefs is because if there's an industry norm and you do a piece of content on that, it's going to be relevant to 90 to 100% of the niche. And so that piece of content is extremely relevant. Not everyone is going to have the same limiting belief. So if you thought reversal a limiting belief, it might only apply to 40 to 60% of the audience. But they're still really important. Like one of our best videos was a video on titled, "You're Not Afraid of the Camera," because that was a limiting belief we heard all the time. And then the last one are objections. So like what objections do they have to buying from you and listening to you? And then you start to thought reversal those. But it really is one of those things that now you're aware of it, you can start to recognize, hey, this is a belief. And you just kind of keep a log or a journal of it. And then as you need to do it and need a piece of content, you can just start to work on your thought reversal scripts from there.
So I guess even if you like just sit down and be like, right, these are the things that I want to say, or even I suppose like, because in every business, you know, we're always looking at, or we should be looking at like the pain points and challenges of our audience and then the desires that our audience want to move towards. Because when you have a business, you're being of service, you're either moving someone away from a pain or moving people towards a desire.
Right.
So for me, for example, like when I'm over the years trying to like come up with content ideas, I'll just sit down and either open a document online or have a notebook and just write out ideas of things that I feel like in my heart want to say that align with the mission and the vision of the business and my values. So essentially, if people sit down and start doing that, they can then look at like these different like how to, what was the middle one again? I can't remember.
How to, connection, and thought reversal.
Connection, yeah. So how to, connection, and thought reversal, and maybe take a topic and then look at like, right, what's the how to in this? What's the connection point in this? And what's the thought reversal in this? And then kind of engineer it so that it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start for sure. And it also depends on the vehicle that you're using. So like, again, content is just the vehicle. So if you're doing a podcast, you can probably incorporate all 3 of those elements into one podcast episode. If you're doing videos, you might want to just do a video on one. So like one video is a connection, one video is a thought reversal, one video is a how-to or whatever. And as people experience the brain, they get a taste of all of them together. But yeah, I think it's just kind of sitting down and kind of going through it. And what I tell people, and this, I know you'll understand it, but to a lot of people who don't understand this concept, it's going to sound a little weird, but I tell people that you create in the silence. And what I mean by that is the best content that I have or that I create or the best business decisions, all of it comes in the silence. And what I mean by silence is not just being in a quiet room, but literally shutting your mind off. Mm-hmm. So, we all have thoughts, and sometimes we have thoughts that we don't want. And we have thoughts when we're in the shower of like an argument we were in, and all of a sudden we have the best argument. The thing is we don't normally think of those thoughts. Like if you have really bad thoughts in your head that just appear, you're not thinking those. So it's like, where do those thoughts come from? They come from somewhere. And when you're in the shower and your brain's turned off and these things enter your head, people might call them downloads. Where does that come from? And what if you leaned into that? And so another way to kind of explain this is when we're creating something, whether it be content or a business, that thing that we're trying to create is outside of the box. So let's just call reality this box. There's this box of reality. We're trying to create something that doesn't exist yet, which means we're trying to create something outside of the box. The problem is people try to create outside the box with thinking that is inside the box, and that doesn't work. And when you get silence, what silence does is it shuts off that world. It shuts off the world of reality. It basically gets that reality out of there. And you can tell when it's turned on because you start to create things and you hear, no one's going to like this. This is not realistic. This doesn't make any sense. This, whatever. And you have all of these things. That's thinking from inside the box. So if you're trying to create the most powerful, best content, the best business, you have to sit in the silence because it shuts the world off. The world that has told you this is the way it's supposed to be is shut off. And then now that allows you to have outside the box thinking, which then you start to create on a whole nother level. So like the number one thing is like, yes, do the journaling, but make sure you're sitting in the silence in the mind so that you can download whatever it is you need to download. And this idea of it's not possible or unrealistic never enters your head. And that's really where you want to start creating all of this stuff from.
And I just think that what you said is so powerful because I think so often we don't give ourselves permission to create the space for the silence, and we absolutely need to, because I find that that's when the most powerful ideas and thoughts come to me for creating things. Like even when I give myself permission to sit down and meditate, like for such a long time, I actually struggled with giving myself permission because I was too busy working, like get up, get into it, do it. I've got all these things I need to get done. And the noise that is created from that, you can't think creatively, you can't tune into that true voice and that true source within you to get, like what you said, like those downloads. And this year in particular, I've really forced myself to take a step back from just being busy and give myself that permission to create space for the silence. And even if it's just like going on a walk, like sometimes when I'm just going on a walk, I get like the best ideas and like the stuff comes to me and I'm like, this is where the magic happens. But we just don't give ourselves permission because we think that we're not doing anything. We think we're not being productive. We think that sitting down and meditating isn't being productive. And I'm like, that is literally the most productive thing you can do.
It is. It's so true to the point where I go on a walk every night. I take my dog and we go walk her sometimes for even up to an hour. I used to listen to podcast episodes on that. And now I don't have anything. I just like focus on getting in the silence because it really is that powerful to just sit there and to get those ideas. And sometimes I don't have any on a walk and sometimes I'll have a ton, but that's where the best stuff comes from. And as we've built our company, I've really discovered that actually is a part of my role. Part of my role is like getting into that silence, and the team needs to allow me to do that. So even small things that don't seem like they take up much time, like organizing my calendar or helping me answer emails or making decisions on their own that I don't need to make, or giving them like certain budgets that they can spend on so they don't even have to bug me with stuff, like all of that stuff, because all that stuff would come on to me, which takes away from my time of being silent. It adds more noise to the mix. So I've really focused, especially the last 6 months, on like even helping my team get me to that place of of silence.
Yeah. That's been a big focus of mine this year as well. Like, yeah, because otherwise you just can't tap into that special place within you to listen to what's coming through. And I think
especially when you add kids to the mix too.
Exactly.
So I have 3 little ones at home, so it's
before we started recording, I was asking Brandon about life with more than one kid as I prepare for baby number 2. But I was looking around before because I was trying to find this notebook I actually found the other weekend, and it was an old notebook full of ideas I'd put for content. And I was like, these are so good. I've been repurposing so many of them. I was like, I'm just going to do this content again. And I think that it's like, again, back then when I was actually sitting down and creating the space for, coming up with ideas. And I think just also with like content creation, I think that the more you kind of start to get intentional about creating content and what content you'd like to create and what you want to put out into the world and what your voice is, I don't know, the more you can allow things to start flowing through you. But I don't know if you find this, but then when I got more intentional because I'm thinking about something, when I do allow myself to like get silent, I find that then the ideas and inspiration flows through more freely. And I don't know, it's just really powerful.
That's what it is. It's a flow. And you get into that flow. And again, everyone listening has had that experience on some level, whether it be just journaling and have an explosion of thoughts. But I will tell you guys this, when you do get silent and things come to you, like just remember not to go back to that box of reality of like, oh, this is unrealistic, or I'm going to get haters, because of course you should be getting haters. Like if you're not getting people commenting on your stuff, whether it be good or bad, you're playing in the middle. And no one ever built anything successful by sitting there and playing in the middle. Yeah. And there's nothing better than standing up for what you believe in and thriving because of it. And here's the thing is when you're trying to create something outside of the box and you have outside the box thinking, everyone's going to try to pull you back inside the box. They're going to tell you this is what realistic is. And realistic is nothing more than someone else's borders and boundaries that they put up that you took on as your own. Yeah. And so what that allows you to do, and I'm just preparing you guys, is that when you get into that state, not only are you in a flow, but that's when you're in your purpose. People always say like, how do I know if I'm aligned how do I know if I'm aligned or in my purpose or whatever? And it's like, just get silent and whatever comes out and you're like, heck yeah, like that is what I want to say. Guess what? You're aligned. And if you're not going to follow through with it because you're afraid of the judgment or whatever, well, now you're out of alignment and that's not going to go very well for you inside your business.
Yeah, so true. One of the things I wanted to ask you, because when you were talking before, obviously talking about we create content for a purpose, and obviously the ultimate purpose is to be able to get people to buy from us and to make money. And like what you said, money has to be a high priority. Otherwise we can't be in business. Right. But for people who haven't yet got anything to offer or sell, content creation is still powerful. So would you just say to people, like, because I created content for actually a really long time before I had the guts to put any offers together because I was just so in my own way with it all. But I'm so glad that I did spend that time actually putting out free content, because that helped me to establish what my voice was, what it was that I wanted to share, what was at the heart and soul of me and the business, and build that audience of people who were really engaging and connecting with my message. So when it came time to put the offer out there, it went really well because I had built up that audience. So would you say for people that are just getting into starting a business but don't perhaps know 100% yet whether they're going to create a course or a digital product or a membership or whatever it is, for them to just first get on with creating content?
Yeah, I think that's a good way. And by the way, there's no right or wrong way to do it. So you could create the program first and then build the audience, or vice versa. But yeah, if you're totally lost on like what do I want to build here, finding your voice is the most important thing and the most powerful thing, because then you start attracting the people that connect with you. And then when you have a tribe of people that connect with you and what you stand for, they're going to be like 10 times more likely to buy whatever it is you put out. So I think that's an amazing strategy. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I also just think like, I think we've mentioned this before, but like the more you show up and share something and start to ask yourself, what is it that you want to share? What is it within you that you've got to say? The more you practice showing up and sharing, the more you start to realise who you are and what you actually do have to say. And you refine that and refine that and refine that. Sometimes it's a really long time. Like sometimes it can be quite a long process. Like it's really interesting. This, even if it's in myself and I've seen it with other people, like it takes them actually years to finally break through and to stand in their own power and be like, this is who I am and this is what I stand for. But once that breakthrough moment happens, it's like it's like, I don't know, everything opens up and the way they attract people to them is just phenomenal. But it takes time sometimes to feel comfortable or to even get to dig deep with yourself to get to that point.
It does. And that's the other thing too, is like when people procrastinate and they wait, I want to shake them gently and tell them, look, it's going to take some time to finally get to the root of where you're at. Like if we go back to that alphabet thing I was talking about, there's 26 steps you're going to have to go through. And you could go through those 26 steps in 5 years or 3 months. It's up to you. And there's going to be that evolution. And I always say that messaging and stuff, it's an evolution, and it's a never ending process. Like I look back at where I started my business, 6 or 7 years ago, and we were selling real estate videos to real estate agents, and we were selling like the listing videos. And somehow I ended up here doing what I'm doing now. And it's been like such a crazy journey, but there's all these evolutions and steps that I had to go through. And had I waited 6 years and procrastinated 6 years and got started today doing the listing videos for real estate agents, I wouldn't recognize it at the time, but I still have 6 years to go just to get to this point. Like I would have been so happy I started when I actually did. And I always say what you start with will never be what you end with, but you have to get started in order to get there. So, and most people just don't, new entrepreneurs don't quite recognize how powerful that really is.
Yeah, it's so true. And like, I was talking about this recently with my own journey of like starting with phone unlocking. Like phone unlocking was so dull. But it was the beginning of a journey that helped me to realize the power of the internet and the fact it was a blooming gold mine that you could make money off doing something as crazy as phone unlocking and have no experience about it, no clue what you're doing and still make it work. And I'm so grateful for that experience because it's got me to where I am today, and like all the crazy ideas I've had in between. Like I've started a business telecoms company. Like that's how I figured out how to actually use SEO, and I got myself to the first page of Google for my keyword term. What was it? 30845 numbers. That was my keyword term. In 2 weeks, I managed to do that. I was so impressed with myself. But I learned so many skills, and I learned so much about everything along the way as I was going. And it's funny now because even I look back at the beginning of FEA, and back then when I first got started, because it took me a long time to get started because I kept feeling like, who am I to do this? Who am I to create this? And all that kind of stuff. And I felt like I had to be professional, and I shouldn't really be myself, and that I needed to be better than who I was. And it's interesting because I look back at like the first ever emails that I ever sent to my audience, and they're so formal and they're so not me. And but it just took me, and it's like it took me a while to figure out like, who am I trying to be right now? Like, how can I just show up and be me? And who is me? Like, who am I? And but that's part of like why I love business, because it's such a big personal development journey, and it's such an exploration into who we actually are, what we stand for, what our message is about. Because I think it's so connected and infused in our brand and our businesses, especially like with online businesces.
I mean, 100%. Yeah, discovering that is absolutely vital. And again, I'm just understanding this idea of the box of reality and how it's created and how people get indoctrinated into things and how society norms are formed. And you start to realize like all of that stuff's an illusion. It's just made up by someone at some point, and enough people agreed like this is what normal is. And as soon as I recognize that, and I'm like, yeah, I don't want to live inside that box anymore. So like, for me, grammar is not a huge priority thing for me. Like I just don't really care. Like I don't care if my emails go out with typos in it or misspellings. Like obviously we do an effort to make sure it doesn't happen, but it happens probably in almost every email. There's like, I just don't care. And so, but that's who I am. And so we've gotten emails in the past. I'm like, oh, that's not very professional. And I'm like, great. Well, I guess I'm not professional then. So I'm going to keep doing me, and I always told my team, and Taylor, Taylor, and Taylor came into the business. She's like, this is horrid. You said, she's like, you sent this out. I was like, you can proof it. Don't change the words. If you want to proof it, send it out. But I would always say, I'm going to be the first 7-figure business owner in our space who doesn't give a crap about spelling and grammar. Like, watch me do it. And then we did it. And now we're a multi-million-dollar company. And obviously like we do check certain things and whatever, but like, it's not, you just don't care. But that's who I am. I'm more concerned about the influence of persuasion. Like, are we communicating the right message than I am like, did we put a period in the right spot? And so, but if you are someone who loves the grammar, then go do that. It's just, you got to understand who it is that you are and what makes you tick, and lean into that and stop adjusting, because the second you adjust, you're out of alignment of who you are.
So true. It's funny because I sign off my emails with kisses, my weekly emails, and I write to people like I'm writing to my best friend, and sometimes I actually sign off with love. And some people reply being like, I'm not your friend. I don't know you. Why are you signing this off like this? I'm like, oh, come on, let's calm down.
I'm sorry for being nice.
But it's funny, but it took me a really long time to like feel like I could write like that, and I could do that, and I could just be me. Like, when I stopped putting best wishes at the end of my email.
Yeah.
Felt liberating to be able to realize I could do that. But yeah, it's so powerful. And I think, for every single online entrepreneur, especially, like, well, for every business owner, if we can't communicate properly, and we can't communicate in a powerful, clear, powerful way, an engaging way, we won't make sales. And if we can't make sales, we don't ultimately have a viable business. So right. I just think this is so important. And obviously, like you said, those 3 different types of content to think of: how to, connection, and thought reversal, and starting to get more intentional about how we're creating content that, is based off of those 3 different categories, can make such a difference in the level of engagement we have with our audience. And I think it's also powerful, like, because you talked about Gary Vaynerchuk, but even looking at people that you follow and looking at why you follow them, what they've created that's actually captivated your conduct, that's captured your attention, and that's made you engage with them, or made you want to sign up, or made you want to become a follower, or made you want to even become a customer, and looking at what it is that they've done that's created that feeling and that emotion that you've wanted to go and do that. And I love doing that because it makes me realize, oh, that's what they've done. I can see.
Yeah. Well, especially now that you guys know these 3 concepts, you can start to recognize it a lot more. And I know there might be people on listening to this podcast who are like, well, I'm doing well, and I focus all on how-to content. And you really have to recognize, like, that might be true, but they're not following you because you have a better tutorial than someone else. They're following you because there's something that they connect with you on when you do your tutorials. Like, whether it be you have a family and they have a family, they like your personality, there's something else, deeper layers going on of why you're thriving with how-to content. And I'm just saying, let's lean into that. Let's go beneath the layers of who you truly are, lean into that with your messaging and with your content, and you'll thrive because of it.
Yeah. I like this. I like doing that, and paying attention to other people's stories and how other people are showing up and sharing content in powerful ways, because it sparks ideas for me and for things I could be sharing. And so many good ideas and so many things for people to try out and test out. And I think it's so important that we do give ourselves permission to just do it imperfectly, get stuff out there, practice finding our own voice and refining it and figuring out more and more who we are and what it is we have to say and what those thought reversal messages are that we want to even put out there. It's just powerful. Makes such a difference.
It does.
So thank you so much for coming and sharing that with us all.
Yeah, of course. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to come on and speak to your audience.
Yeah, I do love this topic, obviously, having built a business completely around communicating this message to inspire and empower other people. And I know firsthand what a difference it makes in terms of creating that success. So where can people find more about you and connect with you and learn from you and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I think if you enjoyed this topic today and some of the concepts I talked about, we talk a lot about all that stuff on our podcast, which is called The New Generation Entrepreneur. We talk about messaging, life, business, reality, all sorts of cool stuff, ghosts too. And sometimes aliens creep their way into it, into topics as well. And then our Instagram, I am Brandon Lucero is the handle. That's a good place to go. And then if you guys want to learn more about our methodology of creating content messaging, you can check out video4xeffect.com.
I will put all those links into the show notes as well. If you are listening on iTunes, head over to femaleentrepreneurassociation.com/Brandon. You will find all of the links and everything there. Do you have any fun woo-woo stories you want to share as we wrap up?
Well, I just want to come out on the record and just say that the U.S. government has officially said that the crafts that they found are not of this world, and no one seems to be paying attention to it because we have COVID and all this stuff. Yeah, did you hear that?
No.
So in the middle of COVID, the Pentagon came out and basically said, hey, we have like tapes of UFOs and stuff like that. But they didn't, that just means unidentified flying object. It could have been the military craft that people don't know about or, whatever. But they just came out and said the materials of the craft are not of this world, and like no one's paying attention to it. It's like, what? How is this not in the news?
Oh my gosh, have I not seen that?
It was nuts. And I'll tell you one quick story from when my wife and I went to Sedona. So if you guys don't know, Sedona is like one of my favorite places in the world. It's like, if you're into woo and spiritual, it's like Disneyland for the woo and spiritual people, but it's also just very beautiful and it's so much outdoor activities. It's just an amazing, amazing place. But there's a lot of UFO sightings there and activity. And they say because there's like different portals and stuff like that. So my wife just doesn't believe any of this stuff. And she's like, oh, you and your crazy stories. So we're sitting out on the deck and I was like, oh, there's one right there. And you just see this light fly across the sky, make a right-hand turn and all of this stuff. And then all of a sudden she's looking at these, she's like, what is that stuff? It's crazy. I'm like, they're UFOs. Like, it's just nuts. And she's like, oh my gosh, like I've never seen anything like this. Well, we're sitting there on the deck having a glass of wine, and it's, when you like sitting somewhere and a car drives by and the headlights kind of like hit you in the face and your face like lights up. Mm-hmm. It was like that, but it was above us and both of our faces lit up and we both looked up and there's just this light shining down on us. And then it shrinks to this small little thing, moves across the sky and disappears. And my wife's like, what the heck was that? And I was like, I have never experienced, I've been to Sedona so many times. I've never experienced anything like that. And it was just insane. It was like nothing I've ever seen before. And James Wedmore, and he lives in Sedona or has a couple houses in Sedona. So I was out on the deck he was actually out on his deck miles away. And he said he experienced the same thing. He's like, dude, a light just shined on us. And I was like, are you kidding? Like the same thing just happened to me. And we were like 5 miles apart. So
that's insane.
Pretty incredible.
I really need to go to Sedona. We've talked about it a lot. I need to do it.
We need to just plan a trip for sure. Next time you're in the States, we need to make it happen.
Definitely. I'm so up for it. I love our conversations and I love your stories. They're the best. So thank you for sharing that with everyone.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
It's part of the thing, like just being open-minded and, I think that's what it's all about.
I just love living in all possibilities at all time. Like that's just where I live and it's just fun. At the end of the day, all this stuff is just fun anyways.
It is, isn't it? And I think that's the thing. It's like just seeing like what's possible and making the most of life and just, opening ourselves up to all sorts and believing that anything is possible.
100%. Yep.
That's where it's at. Definitely. Brandon, thank you so much for joining me and chatting with me. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have all enjoyed. Love listening to this episode. And I would love to hear your comments and get your thoughts on it. Also, definitely head over to the blog and leave your thoughts. And I will see you next week for another episode of the She Means Business Show. Thank you all so much. Bye, everyone. I hope you loved this week's episode of the She Means Business Show. If you want more help and support to build a wildly successful business, then join hundreds of thousands of women and become an FEA insider. You'll get access to some of our amazing freebies, to our bonuses, to our giveaways, to so much good stuff. Head over to femaleentrepreneurassociation.com/insider to get all of the goodness. And I will see you next week for another episode of the She Means Business Show.